What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Reebok Nano Gym. All right, so the Nano gyms are supposed to be an all-encompassing fitness shoe, something that you can bring to the gym, wear on the treadmill, go to the gym floor, lift some weights, maybe take to the track, do some plyometric workouts, some agility workouts. It's supposed to be something that you can do pretty much everything when it comes to fitness with. And it's not really a takedown of the normal Nano. It's just like, I guess, a sister model to the normal Nano, whereas like the Nano Flex is still kind of like the takedown model of the actual Nano. When it comes to actually training, I would say that this is geared a little bit differently than the normal Nano. Like, you don't want to be thinking about these shoes in the same light. Something like this is actually something that isn't meant for hard training or hard weightlifting, powerlifting movements. Something like this is mainly made for the more casual gym goer. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the Nano gyms. So first off, we have a lightweight mesh material that spans pretty much throughout the toe box. It's more open on top to allow for more breathability and flexibility in that area. And then we have a more structured mesh that goes around the ridges of the shoe to give your foot some more support. In the middle part of the shoe, we've got overlays back to that open mesh kind of material. And then on top of that, there is a more structured piece that goes through the middle of the vector. And I would assume that that's some kind of TPU with a kind of soft touch lining on top of it. Around the ankle collar and heel of the shoe, there's a soft touch mesh. And then the ankle collar itself is lined very well. It's super plush. We've got a turned out Achilles to reduce friction on your heel, and then you also have a stabilizing clip at the heel part of the shoe as well. Now, taking a look at the tongue and the laces are really nothing special. They're a kind of cheapy feeling flat lace, but they stay tied. Can't really complain about that. And then the lacing system on the shoe is just a real basic lacing system as well. There's no option to do a runner's lock, which is kind of missed on this shoe, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. But the tongue is very comfortable. It's super plush. It stays in place. It's gusseted on the sides. The only issue that I ran into with the tongue is that when you put your foot in, the sides of the tongue kind of want to fold a little bit, so you do have to like unfold them after you get your foot into the shoe. The insole on this is removable. It's actually a pretty nice insole. It's a little bit on the slippery side. It's not like Nano 13 slippery, but it's a little bit on the slippery side. It's anatomically molded. It's got like a little pattern on the bottom and the heel part, and I'm assuming that that's just to increase like flexibility throughout it. But it is a nice insole, so that's nice to see on a shoe at this price point. Now, taking a look at the midsole of the shoe, we have an EVA midsole that has an 8mm drop, and the pitch from heel to toe is definitely noticeable. It feels like there's a ton more cushioning at the heel, and then it drops off to a lighter cushioning at the forefoot. It's not anything like a dual density foam or anything like that, and it is probably more on the softer side. If you're somebody that needs more cushioning in your shoe, then this is probably going to be for you. At the outsole, we have rubber in the forefoot and then rubber at the heel, but the mid part of the shoe is all exposed foam. You have flex grooves all throughout the outsole, increases flexibility. It's not super flexible at the heel part of the shoe, but it can bend. So if you are running and you're a heel striker, you're gonna appreciate that bit. There's a little bit of a toe bumper. It's not that big, it's not that wide. It doesn't rise up too much, but it is there. And then at the very heel part of the shoe, there's a little bit of rubber that extends upwards to give you more structure in that area. It's generally a flat contact shoe. There's not a lot of toe spring. There's also not a lot of heel rocker. So it does feel flat against the ground, which is going to be good for certain gym movements. But oddly enough, these shoes, for their intended purpose, are a little bit on the heavier side. I got a men's size 10.5 in at 13.8 ounces. Not super heavy, but not light considering what these shoes are going up against. So when it comes to sizing your Nano gyms, I'm gonna recommend that you go with your normal training shoe size. They do fit a little bit more similar to odd Nanos, so maybe a little bit on the bigger side, but I think it's a comfortable fit. Compared to the Nano 14, these do fit a little bit on the bigger and more wider side, so I think people are gonna really like that about them. There's ample room in the toe box. It's not the most anatomically shaped toe box, but I think the upper allows for enough toe splay. There's good enough volume there, and I think most people should fit these just fine. If you're somebody that has skinnier ankles like me though, you might have some issues with heel slip. No matter what I did with these shoes, it just never felt like my heel was securely in place, and I noticed that for more of my dynamic movements. All right, so it seems like the intended use of the shoe is supposed to be more geared towards like running, lighter weight, body weight kind of workouts, not really like powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting. For sure you could use them for CrossFit, but they're not really a CrossFit shoe. And when it came to running, I thought that these shoes were okay. There's a good amount of cushioning there, but they're still pretty clunky because of the way that they're shaped, and they are heavy. I did not like running in these shoes. I think that they are usable. Like if you're not doing a ton of running, maybe, 400 repeats, 800s at a time, then I think that they would be okay. But I thought overall running in them was not very good. And this was just running on the treadmill. What I think most people are gonna buy these shoes for. You're definitely not gonna wanna run long distances in these shoes. But when it came to body weight movements like box jumps, I thought that they were okay. They were decently responsive. The grip on top of the box was actually pretty good. Landings were comfortable. There's a good amount of cushioning in the shoe. So if you're like more heavy on your feet, then I think that you're gonna appreciate the cushioning that they put in these shoes. I didn't think that these were the greatest burpee shoe. I thought that they were okay. There's a decent amount of flexibility in the forefoot, but the toe bumper didn't really do me any favors getting up from the floor. They weren't as heavy feeling when I was doing like box jumps or burpees, more of like the less repetitive bounding movements. For jump roping, I think that they would be okay. I didn't really get any double unders in, but there's a good amount of flexibility in the toe, so I'm not too worried about that. Where these excel at the most is just lifting lighter loads. So I thought that these were really good for doing wall balls where the cushioning doesn't really get in the way. The flat contact profile helps you out staying connected to the ground through your squat, and the heel gives you a mechanical advantage. It does definitely feel like these shoes are pitched more forward. So when you go into your squat, it is easier to get into your squat or to get depth in your squat with these shoes on. I noticed that with goblet squats as well. The goblet squats that I was doing was only at 53 pounds. So the amount of cushioning that these shoes had didn't detract from that movement as well. Where I thought these shoes did poorly was movements that I don't think that people are actually buying these shoes to do. But if you're a CrossFitter like me, then they're gonna come up in your workout routine. So I noticed that these were generally unstable doing anything that required balance. So dynamic lifts, AKA Olympic weightlifting. Doing push jerks in these shoes, I never felt like my heel was ever securely in place. It actually felt like my heel wanted to pop out of these shoes. And no matter what I did, lace them up as tight as I could never really get rid of that. There's a good amount of cushioning, so that really makes balancing overhead not that easy to do. And I noticed that mainly when I was doing power snatches. I was catching everything forward, and I think that has to do with the pitch of the shoe, plus not really being able to stabilize that great due to the heel and due to the amount of cushioning. When it came to power cleans, I thought that these were generally okay. They were usable, but the amount of cushioning makes power delivery not that great. So generally, I would avoid doing any medium or moderate to heavy weights when it comes to like Olympic weightlifting movements or more dynamic movements. The amount of cushioning there was also noticeable doing dual kettlebell swings. The amount of pitch was definitely noticeable doing dual kettlebell swings. Something that you're gonna wanna lean more towards the back part of the shoe is generally not gonna be that stable. I didn't do any deadlifts in these shoes, but you could imagine that the amount of cushioning there is gonna definitely make that movement feel muddy. Plus the pitch forward is going to be noticeable when you're returning the bar down to the ground. Where I thought that these did okay for was just slower lifts, back squats, and front squats. I thought that if you get your foot in place and you get settled, then they did okay. The midsole is for sure soft, and you're gonna feel that, it's gonna compress, but it doesn't compress to the point where I thought that you couldn't do what you wanted to do in these shoes. I lifted a 90% front squat, and they wouldn't be my ideal choice or first choice, but it was doable. I don't think that most people should lift that weight in the shoes, but if you really had to, and I think if you had enough body control and mobility, then I think it would be okay to use these shoes for that. Another thing that you don't want to use these shoes for is rope climbing. They're not made for rope climbs. There's no guards. There's only exposed midsole, and the rope will for sure chew through that. Do not use these for rope climbs. The best part about the Nano gyms is that they retail for $100. And I think for that price point, they're gonna attract a lot of buyers that are looking at their rival shoe, the Free Metcon 6. I mean, these even kind of look similar to the Free Metcon 6. And I think that that is by design and not on accident. But really the only thing that you're getting with the Nano Gym over the Free Metcon is that they cost $20 less. So the problem with the Nano Gyms is that they kind of have an identity crisis going on. They've got a wide, flat contact outsole that should be good for lifting weights, but then it's paired with this really chunky, soft midsole that has a very noticeable pitch. And then on the flip side, when you take it to do a running or lighter weight, body weight kind of workout, they just become too heavy. 13.8 ounces is heavy relative to a shoe that it's going up against, like the Nike Free Metcon, which in this last model was only like 10 ounces, is kind of unacceptable. Running in these shoes was generally clunky because of the way that the outsole is shaped, though there is a good amount of midsole foam. So if you are somebody, I guess, on the heavier side, then I think that these would be okay to use. But generally, for my training, I felt like there were zero upsides to using this shoe, especially when you're looking at its competition. And comparing these to some of the more cheaper models in Reebok's range, like the NanoFlex TRs, I still think that they do fall short when it comes to something to do more serious weight training in. Either way, I still think that there's somebody out there for these shoes. It's just not for me. So if you guys have any questions about the Nano Gyms, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And as always, guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.